Are you ready to try an RPG with more serious themes and less slapstick comedy? What is Cthulhu? And what makes a game with Cthulhu in the name even scary at all? In today's episode, we are going to pick up rules hack number 4 for Goblin Quest the RPG, the Cthulhu Files. If you want to experience a game where all the characters go mad and die very quickly, then the Cthulhu Files is the game for you. Welcome to Claim to Game, the podcast helping busy people master tabletop role-playing games one game at a time. I'm Clint.scheirer. I've been an educator for over 12 years and have helped gamers of all levels quickly grasp tabletop RPGs so they can enjoy playing them to the fullest. Stay tuned so you can make your claim to game. Hello and welcome back to episode 20, season 1 of Claim to Game, a predominantly educational fun podcast in which I am daring to coin the word funjucational. It's like buttermilk pancakes raining down from pancake heaven, covered with syrup and whipped cream. Tasty. The game for this season is Goblin Quest the RPG, brought to you by game designer Grant Howitt, whose works include but are not limited to Honey Heist, Die the RPG, Spire, Unbound, One Last Job, Heart, Eat the Reich, and now, at the time of this episode release, the new tabletop RPG, Hollows, fully funded on BackerKit. Our running definition of a rules hack for Goblin Quest is a series of tweaks and twists to the main game which allow you to use it to tell different stories. The fourth of these hacks to appear in the Goblin Quest RPG book on page 90, earned through the Kickstarter stretch goals of 2014, is the Cthulhu Files. Now, before we can talk about the Cthulhu Files, who the heck is Cthulhu? Cthulhu is a fictional cosmic entity created by writer H.P. Lovecraft in the 1920s. Lovecraft described Cthulhu as a monster with humanoid characteristics but with large claws on its head and feet, wings, and an octopus-like face with numerous rubbery feelers around its mouth. His first appearance was in the 1928 issue of the pulp magazine Weird Tales. Cthulhu was supposed to have originated eons ago in outer space, yet resided in a death-like slumber under a sunken city beneath the ocean in the Pacific. The horror aspect of this creature lies in its psychic abilities to mold the dreams and minds of humans. This phenomena in the Cthulhu mythos is said to cause extreme emotions all the way from panic to outright insanity in those who are caught in the grasp of Cthulhu's power. Some humans are led to worship Cthulhu, leading to cult sacrifices to this monstrous deity, aimed at bringing about ecstasy and freedom through destruction, revelry, and violence. Whew! As Marty McFly would say, whoa, this is heavy. And before you ask, yes, there is definitely something wrong with the Earth's gravitational pull here in the Cthulian mythos. But, as we're encouraged in episode 18 by game designer Ken Hite, let's lean into this powerful emotion of fear and see where we can find the fun in playing into the phobia Cthulhu can provide. Before we begin, let's just make it clear, Cthulhu Files is different from all the other Goblin Quest rules hacks that we've done so far. Its tone is more serious, and you can run into sensitive themes. It could be a good idea to go back to episode 18 and listen to the part where the X card safety mechanic is discussed. This is a great way not to flare up any of your fellow players' traumas and still have fun. Also, come to grips with the fact that your goal here is not to win, but telling a great story is the goal. It's very likely your character will go insane and die. This is the core of the Cthulhu gameplay experience. That is the ball you are being asked to play with in this game that's been presented to you. If you want to learn more about this analogy, you can go back and listen to episode 16 with Robin D. Laws, where he talks about keeping your eye on the ball when playing a tabletop RPG to create the best collaborative storytelling experience for you and others at the table. And if you feel like you want to dive further into the Cthulhu mythos or want to try out other Cthulhu-esque games, you can look into Trail of Cthulhu, designed by Ken Hite, Delta Green, or Call of Cthulhu, the granddaddy of them all. I'll include links to all these excellent tabletop RPGs in the show notes. Time to set the scene. Here is a nice quick line on page 90 that can get your players into the idea of Cthulhu without making them have to read a Lovecraftian novel. There are old gods, eons old, who dwell in the darkness between the stars, in the bowels of the earth, in the mirror's reflection, in the dreams of mad men. Everywhere, just out of sight. Some intrepid souls choose, wisely or not, to tread out of the light into the shadows and seek the truth behind the lie that is our world. They all go mad. They all die. This is their story. Excellent. You've set the scene for the players, and they understand there's a big bad evil monster. They are playing with fire, just trying to investigate it, and they are going to go insane, and they are going to die. The goal is to tell the story. Dunzo. All in a nice, neat paragraph. Well done, Grant Howitt. Character creation for the Cthulhu Files is simple. Players will play the same character throughout the entire game. You and I will make a character here together so you know how it works. All characters are 1920s investigators, and to flesh out these characters, each player will need to choose a few things. First, a character needs a name. Simple enough. My character is a woman by the name of Samantha Wilburn. Second, your character needs a profession. There are examples on page 90 near the bottom of professions. There's 18 different options to be exact, and I went ahead and rolled a 20-sided dice ahead of time, and I rolled a 16. Samantha Wilburn is a government agent. Since this is taking place in the United States during the 1920s, Samantha will be an agent from the Division of Foreign Information. Now, I may butcher the history here, but we are going to say this department will follow the typical U.S. foreign policy of the 1920s, which was to strongly resist binding commitments and focus instead on preventing the outbreak of war. Super cool opportunity here to tie in Cthulian cult activity getting mixed in with current world affairs of the day. The third thing we need to do is choose one descriptive word that describes our character. Adjectives are welcome here. There are at least 16 listed on page 90. I'm seeing a numerical trend here. Is 16 Cthulhu's number? I saved us time. I rolled my d20 and I got a 15. Samantha Wilburn is a cold-hearted individual. The definition of cold-hearted means she does not feel any affection or sympathy towards other people. All I have to say is watch out. To any other people who play alongside Samantha, she's going to let Cthulhu eat you alive as she dives further into the madness herself. Number 4 is your character's advantage. This will be something your character relies on, typically an object, or it could be a certain access or relationship, connection, or privilege. The key to this is to keep in mind, this should be something that helps the character until it is unceremoniously stripped away. Only 14 options on page 90, so we debunked our theory that 16 is Cthulhu's number. Oh well. And I saved you some time here. I saved us time by rolling the d20, and I got a 14. Oh my. Did I just roll a 16, 15, and 14? I sure as Cthulhu's slimy left tentacle did. What does it mean? Well, rolling a 14 means my advantage is a steel jaw. And oh no, I'm not talking about the Loki-like trickster Decepticon from the Transformers or the baddie from the short-lived Spider-Woman TV series in the 1980s. I'm talking about that big old bear trap that looks like a metal set of dentures ready to snap down on an unsuspecting animal in the forest. Yeah, Samantha likes to use that steel jaw with a cold-hearted determination on anything in her path. But what is Samantha Wilburn's real motive, you ask? It can't be for the good of America, or simply to help her fellow man. No, not with that ice cube filling her bosom's heart-shaped hole. Fifth, we need to figure out her motivation for investigating the Cthulhu mystery. Page 91 has 5. I rolled 1d6 and rolled a 5. Oddly enough, her motive is to live life to the fullest. And since she's void of empathy for others, I'm going to use this characteristic to say that she is narcissistically seeking a thrill from hunting down the truth of this mystery. And she gets a high off this experience no matter who she destroys in her path. Quick pause in the episode. Have you felt like life is too crazy busy, that the tabletop RPGs you've always wanted to learn and play are passing you by? The Claim to Game podcast has but one mission: helping busy people master tabletop role-playing games, one game at a time. If you liked what you've heard today, can you help me spread the good word? Lead the show a 5-star review, thumbs up, positive comment, or written review wherever you listen to your podcasts. You could also leave a review directly on the website, clint.scheirer.com. Your review helps grow the show and helps others learn new tabletop role-playing games. So please, after you finish, rate and review the show. Thank you. Now back to the episode. Every time you use your character's profession, description, or follow your character's motive, you get to add another 1d6 to your dice pool when you roll to attempt to do something within the story. Every time you use your advantage during your turn, you get to re-roll your dice, but if any of your dice have the result of the number 1, you will lose that specific advantage of yours permanently. But Clint, you only mentioned getting an advantage during character creation. Does this mean once I lose my starting advantage, the option to re-roll is no longer available to me? No, friend, that is not what I'm saying. GMs can give players other advantages throughout the game as rewards for when they investigate or roleplay really well. At any given time, a character can have up to 3 advantages. These are usually items, connections, or relationships. For players, advantages are risked to re-roll the dice pool when it makes narrative sense to do so. It must be noted, a player cannot use another advantage in the same go to try to re-roll a re-roll. So if Samantha Wilburn had a special spy camera that let her see through walls and she got a 1 during her dice pool roll, well, she lost that camera. And I can't use her advantage of a secret helicopter that could drop her another spy camera to try to re-roll that advantage. That advantage is just gone, son. It ain't coming back. For GMs, you should try to make sure you're giving out advantages so players have at least 1 to 2 in their back pocket, especially if they are rolling poorly and keep losing their advantages. This back and forth allows for some fun narratively to use these unique elements and add some flavor and spice. And lastly, all the players at the table will need to develop a quick history for their characters with at least one other player's character at the table. This is very similar to Jason Morningstar's Fiasco, where each player's character has a connection to the characters of the player to their right and to their left. Cthulhu Files only asks for one connection with anyone, so keep it light. Have each player answer the following 2 questions for their character's connection and have them write it down so they can attempt to integrate it in the story at a later point. Question number 1, who do they have the connection with? And 2, what happened between these 2 characters? Another mechanic unique for this Goblin Quest hack, but not foreign to the Call of Cthulhu horror genre, is the sanity mechanic. How will players know the status and progress of their character's descent into madness the closer and closer they get to the truth? All characters will have 3 boxes per level of sanity that they are currently in. And these boxes are called your loss boxes. They're similar to the Goblin Quest hit point boxes. Page 92 has a unique dice table that you and your crew will use throughout the game, which shows the effect each stage of madness has on the likelihood of success and survival. But remember, your characters are going to die, so don't bank on winning this game or having a happy ending. Probably ain't gonna happen. All the characters start healthy in the healthy sanity tier and will go down from there. Each time a dice rolled incurs a loss, the players will check off one of the loss boxes in their tier. Once the 3 boxes are checked, you move down to the next tier of insanity. Now, losses can't carry over between sanity levels, so if you already lost 2 boxes and rolled another 2 losses, you would only check 1 box, filling up the 3rd box for your sanity tier. And then you'd move on to the next tier with 3 new empty boxes just waiting to be filled by the disastrous roll. And if your character crosses off 3 boxes, that takes your character temporarily out of that particular scene. The GM and or the player can decide how this looks. There are some examples on page 93, such as being shocked, terrified, or maybe they lost their equipment. I can't help but think of the poor man in Avatar: The Last Airbender. My cabbages! Can't think of anything more debilitating than the loss of leafy greens packed with fiber and potassium. Sounds like future constipation waiting to happen. Whatever pushes them over the edge, make sure that you write it down. It's okay if it makes more sense to hold off on making the loss consequence take place. It doesn't need to be immediate. You can bring it up a little later when it feels more impactful, though the character will still reside in their appropriate sanity tier in the meanwhile. If all the characters are kicked out of the scene due to losses, that ends the scene. The GM can then narrate the appropriate negative story consequence. I mean, maybe the cabbages take on a life of their own, absorbing the psychic energy from Cthulhu into a cabbage monster. Now, a cabbage monster could be seen as comedic, so if you are the GM, make sure this SOB is one scary, serious cabbage monster to keep with the theme of horror. Later, we'll talk about the possibility of regaining some sanity and stability, but the chances of doing so will become less likely as time goes on for the characters. And just like the core Goblin Quest game mechanic, each dice you roll counts, and it's resolved by comparing the results to the dice table on page 92. When you roll the something good or something bad, remember to reread page 43 of the core rulebook, as this reminds you how you can never pass more than one something good or one something bad through your dice rolls. You will be reminded how these results cancel each other out to dictate one clear positive or negative story element for the next player who takes on the narrative. Now let's get crazy talking about these sanity tiers. The first tier is healthy. Everyone begins healthy and stable. You're in control of your life, but it's a dangerous one. Any dice rolled that is a 1 or a 2 is a loss, and you check off the character's loss box for each dice rolled that is a 1 or a 2. In this dice table, it says roll a 3, you get something good that happens, and rolling a 4, something bad happens. You can keep it that way, but it feels to me like these assignments should have been reversed, since to me lower means worse and higher means better. I'll let you decide if you want to keep it as is or swap the 3 and the 4 and what they mean. Rolling a 5 or a 6 in the healthy sanity tier is a victory and helps you move forward in the story plot. One step down the mental totem pole from healthy is shaken. You are not at your best and things get more out of control than you like. Rolling a 1 or 2 is still a loss. 3 or 4 is only something bad that happens. And a 5 and 6 is a victory like before. Why is 3 and 4 only bad? Why did your something good go away? To me, this is a nice design move, helping move the story towards its inevitable sinister end. And once the characters have checked off 3 more boxes, they continue down to unstable. You're in danger to yourself and to others. This time, 1 is a loss, but if you roll a 1, another character picked by the GM also incurs a loss. Ouch! No bueno. If you roll a 2, it's just a loss to your character. 3 means something bad will happen to the next player who takes charge of the narrative. Rolling a 4 brings back a glimmer of hope with something good happening to the next player who takes over the narrative. And 5 and 6 remain a victory. What's a step down from unstable? Doomed. The writing is on the wall. You're at the edge of mental and physical collapse. You have a madman's fervor. Maybe you can do one last thing before you crash and burn. Now, the probability is really 50-50 here. Rolling a 1, 2, or 3 gives you losses, and a 4, 5, and 6 are victories. Your character is both slipping into madness and desperately trying to push on toward obtaining the truth with nothing left to lose. And finally, the doomed will eventually become lost. The book's description is, you're dead or utterly insane. The GM will likely give a permanent horrible destiny to your character and you retire your character. You make a new one if there are other players still in the game, or you could adopt the NPC rules of Goblin Quest. To keep with the sanity rules, NPCs only have 2 loss boxes, and once they experience 2 losses, they are out of the current scene. A player playing an NPC only rolls 1 dice, but can roll 2 dice if they act to that character's strength, whatever that is determined to be. Every time your character rolls the dice, they should be risking something. Page 93 has a list of items at the bottom of the page your character could risk losing. My fave on the list are A, memories, B, face, meaning reputation, C, face, like their actual frickin' face, and D, faith. Faith in what? All right, hopefully you had enough faith in me to get to this point in the episode because we are done front-loading. Let's run through what playing this game will look like. There are 2 ways you could go about building scenes with Cthulhu Files. The first way to do it is just like Goblin Quest, with each scene having a difficulty rating based on the number of players. In Task 1, the DR is equal to the number of players minus 1. In Task 2, the difficulty rating is equal to the number of players. And in Task 3, the difficulty rating is equal to the number of players plus 1. If you want a refresher on difficulty rating calculations, this appears on page 34 of the core rules. And the GM will set the challenge and the difficulty rating for each scene. An example of a scene's challenge may be climb up the giant redwood tree to investigate the dark iridescent shadows. You would still have a task 1, 2, and 3 with 3 scenes or stages in each task. You could decide to have a misfortune or not. If this way doesn't feel very cinematic to you, you could choose to build your scenes with option 2. Now, this alternative scene building strategy appears on page 96 through 97 in the section on GM tips for running Cthulhu Files. In this version, the difficulty for a good solid scene is set at 1.5 times the number of players playing the game. So, if we were playing with our standard 4 players, the difficulty would be 6. The GM can decide how many scenes they want to play, and it's always okay to up that difficulty after the first scene depending on how you feel the players are progressing or not progressing towards their doom. And if you've managed to get a group of gamers together to play this game, it's possible that you, as the GM, have some writer's block as to what scenes to prepare. On page 96 through 97, writer and game designer Graham Wamsley has given 5 fantastic starting points to jump off into the deep end of the Cthulhu pool. My favorite of these is The Last Spartan. Here it is. In the 1920s, New York, dead bodies appear in alleyways beaten to death. When the investigators pursue the trail, they find the murderer is a Greek man who believes that he is the last of the Spartan warriors fighting against unnatural forces. Indeed, the victims all have connections to a bizarre sorcerous ritual at the heart of Manhattan. Can the investigators stop it? In the book, Graham Wamsley jotted down 5 scenes with the preceding difficulty ratings for each scene. Scene 1, following the trail of bodies from Queens in New York. That's a difficulty rating of 3. Scene 2, finding the last Spartan in Queens. That's a DR of 4. Scene 3, uncovering the ritual. DR of 4. Scene 4, finding the sorcerers. DR of 6. And lastly, Scene 5, stopping the ritual. Difficulty rating of 6. Play that out with a heavy New Yorker accent, and we got the makings of some real fine storytelling. Other than the normal Goblin Quest mechanics, players can go through scenes with 2 special actions only found in the Cthulhu Files. First, a character can try to go back up the scale of sanity. How? Resting, resupplying, healing, or just not engaging in the terrifying unknown. If a player wishes to do this, they should roll 1d6 for every level of sanity that they have left remaining. If they roll a 5 or a 6, they can regain a level of sanity. These opportunities, however, will narratively become less and less as time goes on in the game, so the GM should be aware of the rhythm and beats of the story and decide whether it's appropriate or possible for sanity to be recouped. For example, let's say Samantha Wilburn is caught in the face tentacles of a Cthulian monstrosity. It would not make narrative sense for me as a player to say, I tried to recoup my sanity by eating a protein bar I left in my pocket to satisfy my hunger. Well, the real question here is, would Cthulhu want a protein bar too? Samantha may incur more wrath by not having another protein bar, becoming a protein bar herself. The second special action that can be taken by a character is casting a spell. Spells in the game should be very rare and given out as a special advantage by the GM sparingly. Each advantage that has a spell casting ability will be given a rating by the GM from 1 to 5. When casting that spell during their action, the player is granted the ability to roll that many more dice to the relevant roll. Example, Samantha found a medallion that, when breathed upon, summons a storm of crows that will attack her direct foe. A list of great examples of potential spell effects and items exists on page 94. All right, let's bring it into the home stretch with a few final GMing tips for this game. If players choose to abandon a goal within their scene, the GM should make them feel it and have it come back to bite them in the butt later. Write it down. Goals can be either something the player is choosing to do in a scene or something that is done to the players that they need to overcome. Actions have consequences, my friend. The GM also has ultimate power to veto any something good or any something bad effect in the spirit of telling the best story. An example, the pace of the game is the final hour where the tragic characters are about to meet their tormentors. A player rolls something good on their dice and says, "A helicopter flies in to the forest clearing and picks us all up and we escape." Well, just like I tell my kids when they want something they cannot have, that's a big fat no. Remind the players at the beginning of the game that the goal is not to win. It is to tell the best story possible. It's not just the GM's goal to keep their eye on the ball, but also the player's responsibility to pick it up. For more on that, go back to episode 16 and listen to my friend Robin D. Laws. And finally, if your players are stuck and don't know what they should do next, which is very possible if you have a group of new gamers that are new to RPGs, tell them to hit the streets and ask NPCs walking around what's going on. You as the GM can have some pre-made characters to drag and drop into these scenes with motives, personality, and possible secrets and clues that they are hiding. This trick I picked up from Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master by Mike Shea. It is a great read. Go pick it up. If you're interested, I'll leave a link to it in the show notes. So ditch the comedy and put them laughs straight in the trash, man. It's time to get scared with some cosmic horror. It's time to embrace the Cthulhu Files. Join us next time as we continue our quest, Claiming Goblin Quest. With 4 rules hacks down, we got 3 more hacks to go. Our next one is neither super nor heroic. No, that's the name of the game. Neither super nor heroic. Superheroes are real in this game. Unfortunately, the bad news is you're not one of them. Have you been listening to the first season of Claim to Game and do not yet have your very own copy of Goblin Quest the RPG? Picture yourself pretending to be gross, grotty little buggers on your next game night with your closest friends. Laughs, goofs, and goblins. Don't wait. Click on the link in the show notes. Don't like goblins? Enjoy 7 different Goblin Quest setting hacks in the back of the core rulebook. It's almost like getting 8 games for the price of 1. Enjoy your copy of Goblin Quest the RPG today. And until the next time we make our claim to game, 1 game at a time.